Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Culver Board of Zoning Appeals. Remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. So just know that when you're speaking. I have had one request from a person that sometimes listens in, said they really have trouble hearing the people in the audience when they talk. Ask if they could come forward and talk a little bit closer to the microphones. If you could do that or really speak up loud or something. So people can hear, but I have had people complain about that, so.
You had a podium.
Yeah, we did, but
You can step back.
I'll get on it.
okay, Mr. Secretary, if we could have roll call
Dan Adams,
here.
Gary McDaniel,
Present.
Deanna Osborne,
Present.
Andrew Melton,
Present.
Jenny Monroe,
Available.
and John Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The minutes for the November meeting are not finished yet, so we will not approve those until our next meeting. First item on the agenda is 2022 B025 or B99811. Mr. Easterday, I believe you're presenting this.
Good evening. I'm James Easterday, just for the record. And just to give you a little bit of a history on this thing, we had been dealing with the board for several months, several occasions, several times, both formally and informally, about the property that we're talking about here and the property immediately adjacent to it to the south. During the course of all of those discussions, at some point in time, they said we thought it would be better to deal with this property and to deal with the property pretty much where it was, how it is. And so at that time, back in July of 2021, we brought together a petition to have a variance for the purpose of rebuilding on the present foundation lines with a 30-foot height. That height variance was approved by the board at that point in time, and we moved forward. Unfortunately, because of COVID and other reasons, in fact, we even lost the designer partially because of some health reasons. They had to go to a different architect designer. They realized by the time they got the plans developed and done and to the town that they had missed the 1 year for the variance. And so we're basically coming back asking that you renew that and grant us that variance again. The plans and everything have already been developed. Everything's been developed. Basically, it's just a matter of having the authority to go before the technical review committee and the building committee. The authority, which I believe is the county, for the purposes of this particular variance. Let's say it was a good project a year ago. We think it's a good project now, and we'd ask you to simply reinstate it, approve it again. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I hope I'm loud enough.
Was any work done on it anytime prior to the expiration of the time of the variance?
Not to my knowledge.
No,
Nothing was ever done.
other than Habitat came in and did some deconstruction, that's it. Rest of the structure is all intact,
I mean, you're talking like one over door, you know,
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
done,
cabinetry, things like that.
and it wasn't, I mean, nobody said anything prior to that. Now it's empty.
Well, last summer, I think, there was some occupancy of it last summer, but then after that, then they had Habitat come in and start pulling the thing apart.
So they moved out in order to start the process.
Yes,
Doing
yeah.
it. That's what.
So at this point, the house is basically gutted, completely gutted.
That's true.
It was non-inhabitable.
Right.
It was inhabitable at the time that the variance was.
Well, at the time we came into the variance, we were having some trouble. If I remember correctly, we had some burst pipes and some basically old age issues, but we were still considering it inhabited at that point in time. But that's what caused the decision to not try to remodel that property, but to go to a new house on the same footprint. And we discussed that with the board, and that's why it was approved that way. Because the cost and the ability to rehab the present house was just beyond.
Now, there were actually two variances requested at one point, because we first had a proposal to build a house on the south lawn.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and that was,
And that was turned down.
right,
And then they went to talk about the north lot, then, and that's where the three.
That's where the driveway.
and that,
Same footprint, but asked for a
Right, and
change
you
in
know,
height.
this whole process has been changed like, what, 3 times, different architects.
maybe 6 times.
3 times,
Say,
Yeah,
and to satisfy what we wanted and
right,
what the neighbors, the concerns from the neighbors.
right.
And so that's why we went back to the original footprint and said, okay, we're gonna do the original footprint. We just basically want a height variance.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
To be totally candid, we think we agreed finally with the board at that time that there wasn't going to be a project on the south lot. It just wasn't.
Correct.
It wasn't gonna happen.
And from our last meeting, Ms. Monroe, you stated that actually you met with our current building
Yeah.
commissioner, and you actually modified that a little bit to accommodate
The
the
right of
closeness,
way.
the right of way and to the road
Yeah.
to be
In
more.
many ways, I think our previous building commissioner and us, the town, delayed the project in that 1-year expiration because when we went out to establish grade with the architect, Chuck had decided at that time, oh, this is really close to the right of way and I'd rather you move this back. And so they went back and redesigned yet again.
Right.
So we definitely had impact on the delay.
Okay.
what is the process, Mr. President, as far as if it is an expired variance?
According to Ty Adley, the plan director for the county, we just re-advertise, republish, and they can come back.
So it's not a new application, but it is a new application. I mean, basically, it's, you're asking for a renewal of the old variance.
But we met the requirements, or she's right, we meet the requirements.
So you meet the requirements from the original.
Yes. If they were asking for yet another variance, we'd have to advertise that as well, but we still have to re-advertise this exact same thing they got approved
That'll be
before.
advertised, but I mean, you're just asking for the same thing that was
It was
the
approved.
first time that was approved.
Correct.
And I guess what I'm asking is for the process, can we just renew that? Or just renew it as it is? I mean, just agree, but how would I say this? Just, approve a variance that we already approved, but it has to be approved again.
I
Not
guess you would
renew.
just note in your
Especially-
findings of fact.
Especially since it's a new board, basically, because they're, at that point, it was you and Mr. Osborne and myself, and Mr. Euler, I believe. And I think that was the only 4 here that voted that night. I think we
Yeah,
were
3-1.
never-
3-1.
So we do have basically a new board, and that we talked about it. I had voted against the variance, and that's why it was tabled until
Also, you
today.
have 3 members here, present. So,
Yeah, you had one in Turkey when you were sick.
questions. Mr. Osborne?
I don't have any questions. We've been through this process before and, we got approved and, they've done everything in their power to accommodate what the neighbors' concerns are. And it's always come back to, we're gonna go back in the original footprint. We just want a height variance. We approved that before. And I think this should be a slam dunk as far as I'm concerned. that they get approved again. I mean, they've gutted the house, it's
And what
ready to
else?
be demolished and rebuilt on.
Please mute
And
yourself. if
I think we
you're
need to proceed.
Mr. Manaway, you have any comments, questions?
Um,
It is one of them.
I mean, I've already pretty much asked the question I need to ask.
Andy, that's-
Everything's going back as far as what, and I voted yes on the prior, I'm not saying that I'm required to vote the same every time, but I agree with Dan. I think as far as two members we got here that weren't there at that time should hear exactly what that was proposed or some things. I mean, I do feel that we owe it to the public for you to hear exactly what went on with this. If you have any more questions as far as Mr. Bacon.
We went through a lot last month, so I heard a lot of that.
Who's speaking?
Mr. Chris wasn't here, of course, so.
Now, I did watch the minutes.
Okay.
And
I'm Chris.
I know who that is.
I guess the questions I have are, what were the neighbors' concerns?
Make me reach back a year. But if I remember, the big concern was the triangular shape of that south parcel. And they didn't like the concept of going down to basically a point on the south. And they didn't like the concept of putting any kind of an access in and out of that south, because they had that whole area where they have their little mini marina there, and they didn't want any obstruction of that.
Okay, now I have a couple other questions because I do remember in watching the previous meeting, and I also had some questions about that lot, and the question of whether or not there's underground tanks. And then also whether, I do remember hearing something about in the future, there might be some landscaping or green space put in there, so.
Our plan at this point in time is to not touch the south lot until they're ready to move with some sort of a landscaping or greenscape. We believe that there may be an underground tank underneath that south lot, but we've checked with the state IDEM. And if there was, it's been basically whatever you do to close them. And it seems to be okay with them. We specifically checked that to see.
And
But if we would go forward with any kind of project on the south lot, then we would deal with that.
did you get any kind of verification from IDEM about that it's okay? Or that it's,
They just didn't register any objections to it whatsoever. They were not showing an underground tank there or anything.
okay,
That's not what I'm talking.
I mean, it's actually a separate lot.
Yeah, but that's on the separate one, yes.
Okay.
And at this point in time, we're not planning on touching that one.
Are there any neighbor concerns with the current plan?
There's a question about the current plan. My
You want
name,
to identify yourself so we can put it in the minutes.
my name's Jim DeHaan, DEHAAN. I'm married to Gwen Dante. She's the owner of the property. That's kitty corner across the street.
Okay, and that's to the west or to the west
Yeah.
of this property? Okay.
We just have a question on the 35 feet. Is that part of the variance? It's gonna be taller than 35 feet?
No, they just want to build up to 35.
Okay.
The
Well,
ordinance
I
requires,
also have a question on, it says not to exceed, in the same footprint, height not to exceed 35 feet, and then it also says not to exceed the height of the previous structure. Is that the same?
That's why they're requiring, that's why they're asking for a variance, because our ordinance says it could be rebuilt on the same footprint at the present height of the house. They're asking for a variance to go up to the 35 feet. Yes, they can build to the house, height of the house as before. They could do that, but they're asking for a variance to take it up to 35 feet.
So how much higher would that be?
Well, I don't know what I think we asked about what the present height was
Oh, 4
the
feet.
last
Yeah,
meeting.
so you alluded to it. There was a lot of discussion before and after the
Right.
last variance hearing as to what the grade was. And the grade on that property, because of the property next door, is very low. And so I think it's like 4 feet that are really actually going
Yeah,
up.
I think that's what it was.
So you're saying it's 31 now?
No,
Okay.
to get to 35 feet, you have to go back to the average grade. And the average grade is determined by the neighboring properties. And the neighboring properties south is very, very low.
Because it's,
Now, what
the
about,
property south is that lot we're talking about.
Yeah.
yeah, now what about the property to the north?
Well, you figure your average grade based upon,
But-
kind of a X across the property and
Right.
that's what Chuck and them were spending all
Yeah,
that time.
and technically what we discovered is they could have asked for even higher, because if you read the zoning ordinance, there's 3 different ways you can establish the grade, and one of them allows the homeowner to establish the grade versus,
That's if the building commission, building commissioner.
Yeah.
Agrees.
he was the final authority. So how they set, but we literally went to their house to establish it with the architect.
Okay, so, the current road level.
Yeah.
What height is that relative to where the established grade is?
I don't know. The architect did it. I mean, he put it together. Do you have, and maybe Dean?
Because it sounds like,
It's gotta be
if we're talking about the grade on the south end, that's really low. And I know the road is much higher.
And that's where the 35 feet starts, down
Okay,
there, goes up.
So from the road level, it's not gonna be 35 feet.
Oh, no, not at all.
No,
Well, if
the
you look,
question's gonna be, what is it gonna be?
Right, it's
if you look at this picture, this is from the north. It looks like this is probably road level here. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out also.
Well,
the
normally
35 feet.
he didn't go by the neighboring properties. He goes by the average of what's below and above.
Right.
And so you're not gonna be anywhere near that.
Actually, right here, it does say 35 feet. Did you see the picture I'm looking at here, John?
Yes, I do.
It says 35 feet on the far right side, and it goes down a little bit below the bottom level there, looks like.
how was grade actually established? I mean, the house is already existing, but you're supposed to do it before it's demolished. And if you've got an existing home there now, structure, you go the average from the lowest point to the highest point of the existing structure.
That's how he was doing it,
Yeah.
but the architect also pointed out there were 2 other ways listed, and they came to an agreement on what that would be.
Right, but the 3 ways to establish grade with an existing house, I mean, you still only got, when you have 3 ways or not, you've still got the average from the highest point to the lowest point on any direction. And so it's already existing, and whatever the height is now. It was below the 35 feet.
Yes, it was.
And so, I mean, you've gotten an established grade, whatever, it has nothing to do with any properties on either side. It's just,
Right.
I said that wrong. I should have said either side of the house. That's what I
Okay.
should have said.
all right, because I know we were getting into the other lots.
That's my mistake. I was
It doesn't
thinking,
matter where that lot is.
well, I was thinking of the grade on the north side. Yeah,
The road angle.
yeah, I was saying the grade on the north side versus the grade on the south side.
It's just totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we definitely did it
the best
based
way to
on
grade it, right.
lakeside and roadside, center of house.
There
He
you go, just
crisscrossed the lines.
north, east, and west. You know, your height. It's, whatever it is, you're talking about, still 4 feet difference from the one that's way higher,
Right.
whatever, or way lower.
Other questions from the board before I open it up to the,
Yeah, I still got another one.
okay.
That big tree.
Yep.
What's gonna happen with that?
It's gonna have to come down.
We're gonna take it down as soon as we get
I
approved.
mean, it's so close to
Well,
the road.
Yeah, I know, it's so close to the road, but there is a sewer line that's running through that, next to it, or whatever, and are you taking into the tree, are you gonna take it all the way down completely?
It's gonna have to be taken all the way down.
Yeah.
I would think that it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh,
that-
yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
going into the house.
Well, no, I mean from the roadside.
From the
even.
roadside.
But
Yeah.
from the road too, yeah, I'm a little concerned about the potential for damage to the sewer system that runs along the entire south and west side of the lake. And if there's a contingency plan in place,
There should be no concern about that. The grinder pump will be removed. The house will get constructed, the pump will be put back in, and then they'll tie back in.
and
the sewer
definitely
line.
I'm not so much concerned about their pump, but the main line that's running.
Exactly, yeah, they'll tie it back into the main line if there's any.
I think he's saying
They
he's
disturb the
concerned
main
about
line.
disturbing the main line. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, I'm more concerned
Yeah,
about,
we'll certainly point that out to the architects and the contractors. And if we have to mark it or find it or do whatever, we'll do that.
Yep.
Because there is an easement through there. I'm assuming you're talking Southwest Sewer.
yes, I am.
Yeah, there's an easement through there and we'll abide by that easement.
And just a little concerned about the roots
Yeah.
of
I
that
understand.
tree and how far
Well,
they expand and so.
I understand what you're saying. We'll make a note of that.
I have no more questions.
Any other questions from the board?
No, nothing.
Okay, open it up to the public. And again, identify yourself and speak loud or move up or whatever.
I'm Emily King, and I haven't seen the current plans. But I'm wondering if there are any plans to create their own drive off of West Shore Drive. Rather
Yes,
than
there
to
is.
use the easement. It appeared from the other plans that I saw. That the only way to get into their garage. Is to cross over. From our property and use the easement, which they do have permission to do. But this is now a beautiful home going up that I would think they would want their own drive rather than to have to stop every time they came, open a gate, go through, which they have to stop on West Shore Drive.
Yeah, I think Mr. Easter might have a copy that he can show you, because I have a
Okay.
copy right
Yeah,
here.
that, we thought that was a concern in this triangular area, so the drive is right there.
So they're making a drive off of West Shore Drive.
Directly to the house.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. They
And the
still
garage
have,
door's gonna set at an angle.
I'm sorry?
Garage,
Yes.
what I'm looking at is gonna set at an angle.
Yes. We're not coming. to the top.
okay, and then also I wondered, I have a concern about the large equipment being used for the demolition as well as the construction. And will they be using the easement to get to their property for those purposes? Large pieces of equipment and construction trucks and so on.
I think there'll have to be some, some usage of that for sure, and we'll minimize that if we can.
Okay. So, any kind of, can I have some reassurance somehow that, the easement would be returned to its
Original state.
original condition?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
we would concede that the easement, if there's any damage or change done from its present condition, they would return it back.
Okay.
That's being recorded. So you know.
Any other comments, questions from the audience? Any comments or questions from people online? Anybody wanting to respond? Okay.
Dan, I'd like to ask one more question.
Sure.
Are you wanting to go 35 feet on the house though?
Close to it.
Is there an established height?
Yeah.
Yes,
Or the plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could.
No, I should have,
from average grade, but yes, it's close to
maybe you didn't get that. copy
34.95.
today.
34.
It's on the front,
Pretty close.
33, I thought it said 35.
34.95.
Yeah, there you go. That's all I wanted, because I
Okay.
kept hearing not over 35, and just like the other gentleman was asking me questions, but never was established that I could find it,
Right.
actually what it was, but that's good. Yeah, I probably overlooked it. Yeah, thank you.
Index finger, but-
Everything. Take it through, right?
Right, I know that.
On the finding of facts, we need to use the B 99710.
D.
99710.
It's not what's on.
Yeah. And she's got on.
Yeah, she was asking for.
Yeah,
a
the
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
County was.
B 99710.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And the variance requested would be,
To build to a height not exceeding 35 feet as opposed to the height of the previous structure.
Is everybody ready for finding of facts?
Mhm.
Remember, you vote no on any of these three, you must vote no on the variance. Based upon the evidence submitted, I find that number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Michelin,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Christ,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Melton.
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Christ,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. Mr. Melcher,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Christ,
Yes.
and the chair votes no. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve this variance.
I'll make a motion. We approve the variance.
Second.
Any further discussion on the variance? How do you vote on the variance, Mr. Melcher? Melcher,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Christ,
Yes.
and the chair votes no. It's approved 4-1. Thank
Thank you for your time. May I jokingly ask Mr. Chris if it's okay if I wear my IU sweatshirt like that?
This is only because of my one son. I have another one that's IU in.
I thought you did. That's why I wanted- Thank you, folks. Have a
Are
good
you on back?
Okay, the second variance on the agenda this evening is 2022 V00911. And for Eugene Benedict. And I'll let you go right ahead, whatever you want to present it.
I'll just start it off with, the house is currently 23.5 feet from the sidewalk. And we wanted to add,
And your name is, I'm sorry.
I'm Beth Ecker.
Okay, and you see it,
I-
that's correct, sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. And we wanted to add a handicapped accessible entrance, and have the house come out 7 feet further to match the neighboring house. That would put us a little bit closer to the sidewalk. There's currently,
And you're talking about on the west side of the house.
correct, yes. There's currently, not a house on the south side, and there's not a house across the street either. Just the house to match the house next door.
Which is, you know what,
Correct.
right, there's a street there. South. And then you got a deck on the back that's pretty high up.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite side that you're wanting to,
That's correct, yeah.
and that's not real
Have a little-
high from the street, is it? I mean, is it a fairly
Well, it's pretty,
ramp?
pretty level with the street. If,
Yeah. Yeah.
You want a little end sketch, would that be
Sure.
helpful? Okay. That's the last one.
And you said, how is this in relation to something else that comes,
So the house to the north,
the house to the north?
it has a vestibule slash porch. And it's basically 7 feet, so the two houses were basically identical in size. The house to the north has a 7-foot porch that has been added onto it. And we're just essentially matching that same
Okay.
distance, if you will. But we're not actually going the width of the house. We're actually going to be a little bit shorter. So it's going to be smaller than what,
Is this for a relative or,
well, I own both houses.
okay, okay. So you just want to make it handicap accessible?
Yeah, so the house to the north was handicap accessible. That's why the ramp is on there if you're driven by.
Okay,
And I was just gonna do the same thing with the house.
so you're gonna duplicate what you already have on the house that you own next to it? Okay.
So if it's 7 by 13 foot room, is it a vestibule or the porch?
The vestibule. it'll be open to the house, so it'll be heated and insulated.
So you're just doing, you're not really building a ramp at all, you're, so it's acceptable
Well, so
from the
the,
sidewalk, okay?
right, but the main entrance to the house will be a larger door, we'll screw
Okay,
through that.
sure,
Then there'll be a vestibule inside that will be
okay,
a better entrance, if you will.
yeah, because I was
You're
confused,
correct.
for some reason, I thought it had to be a ramp. That
No, it'll be,
not. Okay,
there'll be a sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah.
But
The house next door is lower.
Yeah.
You seem to understand how that, and, the house we're talking about is pretty much level at this point.
my other house does
I'm
have
just
a
down
ramp
there
as
today.
well, but it actually goes down from the street.
Correct.
Look at it. I will not be doing those kind of straight sidewalk. That's right.
any questions from the board?
I guess. We got one question. I mean, you're only doing this not for a reason of anybody that's handicapped or anything, but is it for
Well,
making it handicap
well,
accessible?
so again, my house to the north has a handicap accessible ramp
Okay,
and it's convenient. It's, I was going to do basically the same thing with my other house, making them somewhat similar.
No, it's,
Okay.
the house is owned by, you own it,
I own both of them.
but why, so why is Mr. Benedict's name on this variance request?
But I'm Mr. Benedict.
Oh, you are Mr. Benedict,
I'm Eugene Benedict the second.
I'm sorry,
I'm Eugene Benedict the second.
oh, okay,
I own both homes.
okay, I didn't.
You were thinking the other, you were
Yeah,
thinking.
exactly.
I was too, I was too. I was
So
like,
you were thinking
wait a
of my
second.
dad.
Yes, exactly.
And my
I was
dad
thinking the
owns-
same thing.
Okay,
So it's, I own two houses and my dad owns the lot,
okay,
so we have that whole kind of.
yeah,
You have to make sure that there's either a two or nothing to be in the name, so.
Yeah.
Yes, I own both those houses.
Cause lots of confusion.
yeah,
Right.
and it does say the second there, so.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I was like,
I was
wondering the same
confused, yeah.
thing. I was thinking Gene was gonna come in here, like, where's Gene at?
I know you said Eugene Benedict. I saw the second, but I don't know.
Well, you should give me a clip
I didn't know
there.
you wanted- I didn't know you
Well,
did.
you know what? Sometimes you just gotta educate, educate your parents.
It was just like that, I saw it.
Yes. Okay, questions from the board? Okay, any questions from the audience or comments? If not, ready to move finding of facts?
What number are we supposed to use on
The
that?
one on the
The one on the paper right here.
paper.
99811.
998.
Always go by that one in case the parent doesn't have one.
Nine. Hey, is this long?
I think it's because when you did the agenda, we probably
I'm looking at this and I'm looking at what I have.
Yeah.
It was very. it's-
filled in the descriptions and had the old number from your last.
Which one?
No, you got the right.
Oh, but it's
Where,
different.
where is it?
It's on the. Over here, it's right here. I just wrote it on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll get this straight one of these days.
Look at Barry's paper.
Yes. Had to have school. Maybe it was me. I can't remember now.
King Benedict the second.
Everybody ready for finding of facts? Again, mind everybody, if you vote no on any of the three questions, must vote no on the variance. Based upon the evidence submitted, I find that number one, the approval will not be injurious to its public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Melson?
Yes.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. Manaway?
Yes.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Number two, the use and the value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Melson?
Yes.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. McManaway?
Yes.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. Mr. Melson?
Yes.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. McManaway?
No.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. I would entertain a motion that we approve this variance. So.
Second.
Any further discussion? Motion on the board or on the floor? On the motion, how do you vote, Mr. Melson?
Yes.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. McManaway?
No.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Move 4-1. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Third, item on the agenda. Page 2022 D99811, is that right?
Yeah,
No, that's the wrong one.
That's nine.
99863.
As you recall, Mr. Richardson had come back in because their, BZA variance had also expired.
I'm sorry.
As you might recall, Mr. Richardson had come back in on this variance because it had expired. You all approved it. However, at the time, Chuck did not publish it as the way we're supposed to republish it. They expired like that. So I contacted Mr. Richardson and said, will you come back yet a third time? We will republish it. But it's much like the Cook case in that the plan has not changed since the last time you addressed this, including the last time you addressed the expiration of the application.
That one wait a few months. That's correct.
Yes. Yeah.
And I apologize, I did not bring all the stuff that I brought last time and knowing, not knowing necessarily that we had a new member. But I can answer any questions that you might have, and if anybody has one of those plans, that would be super handy, but basically it's the exact same design, exact same intent, exact same lease agreements. Nothing's changed. Continues to have the gated community with gates being open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So there's no stoppage of traffic. There's no concern about any added traffic that'll cause problems. Still be irrigated. Any concerns, any neighbors and neighboring properties are limited in directional lighting and maintaining the property in a nice fashion. Also, when we look at the requested special exception, the use is probably far less injurious to neighboring properties than permitted uses under the current zoning ordinance or zoning listed. So it's our hope or our request that the same exception be granted. And hopefully we can get started on the project here soon. Really, the delay has been in figuring out the flow of all of the infrastructure of water and sewer and lines in consideration with the other project that we have that we're under the development phase of for the dunes. So as we look through the one is not necessarily dependent upon the other, but if one if the other is granted, then it makes that route for the sewer and water all that much easier running through the dunes, but it doesn't necessarily dependent upon the dunes either. Has the property been mowed?
Yeah, once or twice.
They say.
Yeah, you need to be on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I keep on them about it, and then we have the service.
Make sure, cause I drive by it I just live right down from there. I drive by
Sure.
it every day.
And I, the same way.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the,
The other thing is, you know, separate of what we talked about with the dune, when would you guys actually start construction of this project?
yeah. As far as I've understood, the intent is always to get started here in the spring, with developing, a certain number of the buildings. The intent is to be a continuous build, not in phases, so.
So what you're telling me is that you're gonna go ahead and do the building construction phase before you do any of the,
Yeah.
the connection or with the water and sewage.
Is my understanding that I'm not the construction
Right, well,
management,
that's
that's,
just asking.
yeah,
I'm
that's-
just asking, Bert.
they've never,
I
they've
wanna
never
know
said
because
that, right,
I just don't want you to come in front of us another year and a half and say, I want another
right. Yeah, I don't,
contingency, because I don't think that's gonna happen,
yeah.
okay?
I think that the project was good before. I think it's good today.
Okay.
And I hope that, it's built, and it's certainly, my recommendation to the construction team to get started on it as soon as possible.
Okay.
And like I said, there's more than one route for the water and sewer to go there. So it doesn't necessarily have to go through the dunes, and is reliant upon that project being approved.
Fair enough.
That expedites.
Well, it offers an opportunity to, maximize efficiencies, I guess you could say. So if you go through that project, it's just, expanding out on, it's an opportunity to buy more material at a lower price per foot and kind of thing. So, it makes it a little bit more affordable actually to do the dunes and extend it with this way, but it's not cost prohibitive to do it without the dune.
A question, because I know before when you were in here, the reason you hadn't even started proceeding on this is because you were waiting for what the development was as far as
Sure.
for the dunes.
Yes.
And I'm perceiving this as that's the reason for the delay of for the approval that you're wanting to do now that had expired, that she informed you about, was due to the fact that the wait on the dunes as far as what you're finding on that.
Right.
So it wasn't like any other delay for the
Correct.
project to start with that variance allowed at the time for the approval.
Right. And I think
You actually chose the delay.
that the construction team had chosen to see if there was an opportunity to connect the two. And so,
Right.
and so we're certainly working full steam ahead on the dunes and getting that project started. But the requirement to build this project isn't required upon the completion of, or the approval of the dunes is what I'm saying. So, but it is beneficial to run everything through that if there's an opportunity for that.
But I
So,
just don't see it. As far as when the board here, as far as
right.
the approval to going through everything before, and you had a time limit for to get that started, but you chose to not do it just because you wanted to find out if it would work better for another project.
Well, no.
I just don't agree with the board of zoning appeals being used in that way. I mean, we're not here for profitable or an easier way for anybody to do anything, we went through all the things for the building, and I do feel like we're being used as much as anything else, just for, whether it be for profit or making it easier on the one that's applying for them to start with. I mean, generally, there's some kind of a hardship or whatever that you're looking at a new project to get a variance for. And me, as far as the use and everything else for the building, that was a reason presented, and the reason's not being proceeding on until you look at another project that's gonna be a.
Yeah, and I think at the time of the consideration for the original project, the Dunes project wasn't even really considered or started. And then as we looked at the ways of which to extend water and sewer to it, the question was, can we do that in a way that is affordable under the financing mechanisms and TIFs and all those kinds of things? And then that brought up the question of, is there an opportunity here for a project with the dunes and that project, the property that's there? And then that consideration started. So the intent at the beginning was not to get one approval and then look for another approval. But, so there was some delay in the construction team there.
I know the town
But we,
also works
we
with
have
you.
to get utilities to the Howard property
Yes, yeah.
from our annexation, so we were, that started some of our conversations with Burke was, well, we know we've got to get utilities put in, and we know from that point at the Howard property, it would cross over to that Tamarack Road property.
And I think once we started that conversation, we looked at,
100% against this. Don't get me wrong, but I just know with the process, the way it went, you know, I mean, we go through all this and then if any other developer wanted to go through the same process as what you're going through, other than, I mean, since it kind of beneficial to the town as well as far as.
right, and I think that's where the question came in. Once we got the approval, then we started talking about, okay, how do we extend it? And they said, okay, well, it benefits us to extend it down the road here as opposed to another route. And we said, okay, well, if we did that, how would we work that all together?
And you were gonna do that as a separate, because you told us that we could do it a lot cheaper than the town could, and that we would take that.
Correct. So
Even though that you knew that the town actually had to extend that down to the Howard project, which was
Correct.
right across the street from where you were at. Or where.
Cat corner, yeah.
Right,
correct.
catty corner, right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, you know, we're obviously open to the town doing whatever they have to put it out to bid, and we'll comply with that process. But if we're there putting all the stuff in and the efficiencies of doing all of the excavation and stuff, we're happy to comply with that, but we're sure that our experiences, we come in far, far below because we don't charge things like time on machines and those types, because the company's not trying to generate income from excavation work. So that was our help with the city is working to help extend that at the most efficient way possible.
I guess I have no clue as to what it is you're trying to do here, because from what it says here, you're gonna put in a mini warehouse for a gated executive storage facility. Sounds like this is a pretty extensive project, so.
Yes, yeah. And I apologize. I didn't have
The variance is just for that. They need the variance to have that mini warehouse on the property because it has to be zoned as special usage for seats.
And we went through
We went through all
2 or 3 meetings
Yeah.
before this.
Right.
Very extensively.
And it's a permitted special use, so it's specifically listed on the statute. And what it is, it's seven buildings, and obviously it has to go through all the construction and approvals and technical review committee. But the design is 7 buildings, have 4 bays each, and each of the bays are leased. They're not purchased as condos or anything, and they're used for storage of large RV vehicles, or could be boats. Each bay will have a large overhead door and a regular size overhead door. And then there'll be air conditioning and everything so that people can store their RVs in there while they're here or over the winter, whatever it might be. And it helps to get those off the road and provides a service for that, to get boats and those things out of driveways and off into a nice gated area.
Okay, and what's the timeline for all this stuff?
For construction?
Yeah.
I think it was 12 to 18 months from beginning to end, continuous build from the date of start.
One of our big concerns when we went through the whole thing was the fact when these places become party places, with it being air conditioning, being able to pull it, and would people be staying in them overnight, having their RV in there, and we put some stipulations on it that there was not to be any parties and overnight staying. And I hope those stipulations are still around.
Haven't even.
Rental agreement.
Yeah.
They had with whoever leases or even purchased. So you guys had required them to add some language to that.
Right.
And Chuck and I both ended up having to review that back and forth.
You have.
Before Chuck approved it, yeah.
And the language is pretty strong on no overnight usage and those types of things, and that all of the tenants are required to abide by all the laws and ordinances of the town of Culver and the state of Indiana. So they couldn't engage in any activity that was overly loud or anything like that. And it specifically states that in there so that they're clear that this is not a party barn. It's not a place to throw large graduation parties and those types of things. It's a place to store equipment, those things that are taking up garages, and people are parking in their driveways as opposed to parking in the garage because the wave runner or the rafts or whatever are in the garage. So it's to provide that service to move things off the streets and out of driveways.
And each unit does have a bathroom in them and
Right.
running
Yeah,
water.
each has, full bathroom in it. And that was a big question was, why do we have the bathrooms? And again, that maintains that opportunity for someone to be able to work on whatever they might have there, clean their RV, clean their boat, whatever it might be, take a shower before they get back in their car to drive back to the house. It's a minimal, there's a loft area too for storage, but it's not a finished, room or anything. It's just an open air loft to store other types of equipment and things.
Wasn't there something brought, I'm trying to go back from this
Sure.
before, but I know there was concern from some of the public is how is that gonna be maintained as far as making sure somebody's not spending the night, what's gonna be the repercussions if somebody does get caught in there?
It would be a violation of their lease, and their lease could be terminated. So yeah, I mean, just like any other, if you don't have the insurance that you're supposed to have, if you don't pay the dues that you're supposed to pay, if you don't, then that would result in a termination of, petition to terminate that lease.
I think the question is, who polices that?
Yeah.
Hey,
Well-
who's going to be there to say, hey, these people have been staying overnight?
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna have a full-time employee there, are
No, there would not be a maintenance, on-site maintenance person, and that would violate the not staying overnight requirement. But you would have property management and maintenance crews that are there on a regular basis. Alan and Chris are gonna maintain ownership of the entire property, and they're gonna use one of the buildings, so they'll have their property on site, so they'll be there on a regular basis. And then there'll be other just management from other tenants, that are there to maintain knowledge and use of the development to make sure that nobody else is staying in the unit overnight.
But there's some neighbors fairly close. The trails.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're right there.
And we welcome the notice if somebody's doing something they're not supposed to. There's a lot of risk there. You're gonna have people that have these RVs in there that are gonna be exceptionally valuable. And we don't want to risk one unit or one tenant because another tenant wants to do something they're not supposed to do.
Do any of those stipulations have to be reapplied?
Good question.
Might need to be readdressed.
I think if you put in your findings that it has to follow the original application stipulations, like,
And stipulations.
yeah, I mean, you can include that in your findings,
Yeah.
and then when we update the county with the results of your findings, they also get a copy of your minutes before the plan director will sign off on it.
To build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they still have to go through the whole process of going through TRC, having a site plan come in and.
I just don't want the new application to nullify.
Yeah,
what was
an
ever
old
done
one.
previously.
Yeah, just because it expired, you should know that it has to meet the original application's stipulations.
Well, I don't want our town police to have to police that, but I do want the town police to be able to report, hey, there's people there at 2 o'clock in the morning and there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have to police it, but they hopefully will have somebody that they can let know, somebody needs to take care of this.
Yeah.
And that's, I assume you will have a property manager or somebody that's in town that's in charge of this?
Be a contact. No.
Well, yeah, there's the property management company that manages any of the apartment complexes. And they would be the ones that would maintain the development, just as any other rental property.
But
So
the company that's doing this, so where's it out of? It's out of
it's out of Plymouth.
Plymouth.
Yeah, yeah. So
They can own these.
no, they're all rentals. It's all gonna be maintained by Beachview Properties or an entity that, right now it's owned by Beachview Properties. So if they were to transfer to a new entity, it would always be a Collins owned entity.
The same people own that condo.
Yeah. I was thinking back to if somebody owned one and they were doing something Can't terminate ownership. That
Right,
is-
right.
Right, and that's part of the
It goes out.
lease process, and if it was going to be an ownership, you know, one, we can't transition to that without a lot of other approvals, but if it was, you would have, just like your homeowners association, your rules and regulations that come with the homeowner
Do
association.
you have a lease agreement done up yet? on
Yes,
this?
yeah. It was provided, I could send it to you tonight.
Absolutely, I'd love to see the lease agreement.
Yeah.
And also I'd like to see a contact, knowing what this contact number, if somebody, whether Dan or I, or drive by at 2 o'clock in the morning, which I don't think.
Right.
But, if there is a party going on, there's a contact number, will that number be?
I think that I think that it would be easy to put up signage so long as it's okay, you know, we comply with the ordinance requirements for signage. There would be, I don't know how long it's gonna take to lease them up. I don't think very long, but a contact for lease, you know, these are for lease. If you wanna contact this number, it'd be property management and maintenance. I'm happy to give you that number, or that has an emergency contact process to it. But also, you know, the town will be aware of that, and we're happy to do that, but
I know,
I-
do that or call the owner. I
The,
mean,
the police are gonna monitor the way they do the storage units on the north end, the way they do all the downtown businesses. Terry will probably have to go in and inspect at some point. Generally, when a building's going up, our emergency services personnel are involved at some stage, and
mhm.
even the downtown businesses, they go around and check all the doors by hand. They know who to call.
They go to the
These are all
cemetery with the lights
friendly
flashing all the
units.
time.
Are they gonna be 24-hour surveillance cameras on all these units? Cause if I rented one, that's what I would want.
Right.
yeah,
And that's, I agree with you. I think that having.
I mean, that would solve a
surveillance
lot of problems and
Yeah.
a lot of the policing issues. If
Right,
you could go back and say, okay, here, there was a party going on here, we'll pull it back up on the video.
Yeah.
surveillance.
I agree with you. I think that continuous video surveillance is a great way to police those things. With the property management and maintenance is currently in the process of fitting all of the developments with cameras that they monitor on a 24-hour basis and have like 3 months worth of data backups on a running basis. So,
Absolutely.
and they have a big monitor in the office so they can see all the properties at any one time. So I think that that's certainly well within the design stipulations that they would put in there, especially considering you're gonna have the large gathering of wealth and property value that could be in those units. So I think that makes 100% sense.
I'm gonna hit you with another question as well.
Yeah.
Because I know it was brought up, and I don't know that we ever got an answer. But I know that, as far as, like your Knox lock system or anything like that, I mean, you've got people that lease these, they're gonna have a key to it.
Correct.
Say if there's a fire or something goes on there, as far as the fire department coming in, are they gonna have access to be able to get in?
Yeah, so the gates will have an emergency access code. I'm almost certain that the gates will only be closed from 9 PM until 6 AM, and they're accessible via key fob. And I'm almost certain that there's a access that would have to be provided to fire for just that type of instance.
Right, because I know you brought it up at one of the meetings, but I don't know if
Yeah.
it's ever got an answer on it.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll make sure that they have everything they need to be able to get in there.
It's not a stipulation I was looking for. I just want to make sure that that was even covered on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll get your email afterwards, so that way I can send it to you directly. The lease agreement, and then I'll make sure that Jenny's got a copy of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm almost,
I like to see that, like, we get something with surveillance in that.
Yeah.
In that agreement, and maybe you need to talk to Al and Chris about that, but I think that's real important.
I don't
for
think,
us.
given the direction they're going with surveillance on the properties, I don't think that that's any question that they would have a problem with that. That might be a requirement that they would have.
I think that's
For us.
kind of a requirement we might,
Right, absolutely.
that they.
So
might
I think
have.
we need one. You see that.
I mean, it sounds like, you've had considerable
Okay,
discussion about concerns. and
Sure.
How are you gonna enforce?
Right.
Right, we need to see something.
Well, and in proving that, and what we should do is include that in the variance.
Right.
Saying this is what we're gonna require, that we have a copy of the lease agreement. That we, or you want to You might want to put you want the surveillance cameras.
Surveillance,
I was gonna say, then you can't,
make sure.
in your findings, don't just say it has to follow the original stipulations. Maybe you said that plus
Plus
it,
these
you know,
new
security
stipulations,
cameras or
yeah.
something.
And I'm almost certain that I submitted for the original
Yeah,
approval,
the agreement.
the agreement as
I
part
think
of
it's
it.
around two. I just don't have the half.
I don't have-
That's been so long ago, I wouldn't expect you to remember it. I just wanted you to know that you,
Questions, because I don't have it
Yeah.
in front of me. to go
Right.
over that.
Yeah,
You-
how's your email address start? Is it DO?
That's OZ. that
Oh,
call
okay,
conduct.
that's fine. Okay,
Richard.
I'm sending you all of them right now.
Okay, perfect.
yeah, I'm happy to submit the lease, and it'll be the one that was, provided last time, so there's been no change to it at all. And then I don't think that, we would stipulate to the video surveillance, if that provides the security for the board to go ahead and approve the variance tonight. But I can come back next meeting if that's what you want to do as well.
What do you want to do, Mr. President? You want to see all that first before we go to finding the facts, or you just want to put that in, stipulation?
Approval time.
That's,
I could go either way. It doesn't matter. I mean, we had. Probably be best if we had it to look through. Make sure we had it.
That's fine, yeah.
And so if we table this until the next meeting and
okay. And Burke, you're fine with that, right?
Yeah.
Not- not
Okay.
in-
We just want to make sure that, we have everything.
I want you guys to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hold you up or anything. We just want to make sure.
Yeah, I don't think that they're planning on pouring foundations,
I don't think they are.
But, I'd say,
And we don't have to republish if it's tabled. We can
Right.
just put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right.
yeah, I'm happy to, like I said, that lease is already done, so I can provide that here in the next couple of days and.
Dan, would you like to make a motion that we table it?
I'll make a motion that we table, petition 202-B 99993.
And
Bill
your second.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. We table this until our, January meeting. When is it? January
It'll end up being, let me pull up my
19th.
calendar.
What it says on our,
Thursday is the 19th.
okay, January 19th meeting. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed 5-0.
Very good, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
And lady.
Any items of new business? Have anything to? Ms. Monroe, do you have anything for us?
I would like to ask a question.
No, you will have, some January cases. The plan commission will have a hearing on 415 Lake Shore, but it is advertised as pending approval of BZA variance on that PUD because of the judge's order that it should go before BZA first. We'll start at plan commission because the property's not been rezoned for you to approve the variance, but since the judge said the variance on it should be approved first, you're gonna go to plan commission, come to BZA, and go back to plan commission. So you'll have that one coming up. And it'll get advertised before the 22nd of December is the deadline for that. And there may be one other case, I'm not sure yet if that one's gonna be ready. And then, of course, FERC's will be on there. And you'll have to go through your usual January, reorganize the board, et cetera.
Turn. My term is up.
I can already get renewed.
Your term is now up.
Yours up. Mine's up.
I'm up. I'm up.
Yeah, I think were you completing JD's term? Okay, yeah.
Your choice. Who marshals, right?
You like?
Oh,
He's boots.
Yeah, I thought John, I don't know.
I thought John took who marshals.
I'll ask Jack who was the coming and
No,
going.
you took Gilbert's spot.
You took
Oh,
boots.
you took, okay.
I thought you said you took JD's spot.
You're, buddy.
You're,
Well, I mean,
What's your name?
You're nothing like,
I've got a question, and I know, Jimmy, we had talked over, because I had a question about the academy with the new barrack. They're going 4 stories high,
with the new barracks.
the new, main,
Okay,
what they tore down, built back, they're going 4 stories, the way I understand it.
it was a story.
Was it 4 stories prior?
It's always been
3 stories,
Four.
so they're just expanding that part of the room on the inside.
I don't know what the square footage difference is. The main difference is
I know
I know
that-
there's no business offices in the bottom floor anymore.
Right.
So it's all.
Maybe that's why they're talking about it at it floor.
Yeah, it was always 4 stories
There's always 4 stories. All right,
for this last 70 years.
Yeah.
and they're just building back, the same builder, so to speak.
I honestly
I thought-
haven't
I
seen the
would-
site plan for it.
And I guess that's what I'm really getting at.
Has it, when Chuck was here, did it go through TRC or anything like that?
It never went to, I don't know if the academy ever come to PRC if it was required.
I haven't
I know.
even looked to see if there's a
But-
permit for it.
But I don't know that as far as the building being, I know it's more than 35 feet. 4 stories. And right now, under our ordinances.
They would come
They
here
would have
for
to
that,
come
right?
for a variance, which they came for several variances over the new buildings as well. And I guess my question is, I don't know if we could find out if that one was ever included in the proposal and all the other new buildings that the proposed in there.
I
Or was it variance?
Their facilities department and, Andy Sellmeyer and then the new guy, yeah. Cause I have not seen the site plan, and I don't know if Chuck dealt with that property or not, but I can also call Chuck, because if there is a history on it,
Yeah.
he would let me know. I've had to call him a couple
I
of
didn't know
things.
if there was a variance required. I don't recall ever being before this board.
Okay,
You
I'm
did,
not ignoring you. I'm typing myself a note to
right?
get in touch with them.
We dealt with the leadership building, because that
Right.
was ours.
Yeah. Oh, the one on the north, for the north end. Okay.
And we dealt with that, and also we dealt with the,
So there were more than one at the time that you
There
guys
were
took
several.
variances for?
Were we looking at something, passing some ordinance for the academy,
We
for
were
their
looking
buildings
at-
at some point with
Yeah.
even the planning commission?
institutional zoning.
Institute,
We
right,
were
exactly.
really working on that.
What we looked at that time were 4 things. It was the football stadium
One stadium.
and the two burial
Dorm.
they built
Yeah.
and the leadership.
Leadership.
And the leadership was, I think, was the only one that was over 35 feet.
Right, I think you're probably right, Dan.
Internet pole, whatever it's called, right there on it.
Now, I know
side.
they built one new barrack, but is Maine the second one that you would have looked at?
No,
No, we.
Okay.
no, those have come up, those are replacement.
And I don't,
Doesn't matter, I don't know that it's on the same
That's a
footprint.
30.
Doesn't matter that it's on the same footprint.
I'm not sure how that would work under,
I don't know either.
I
I
mean,
see, and that's what I would guess, it same height.
I'd be willing to
Same
go
height,
along
same
with that,
footprint, it wouldn't
but
matter.
I just don't know.
Right, it would need a variance.
If the process was supposed to go forward or whether
Maybe the footprint's actually.
it didn't need to.
Yeah, I can look into it, Barry. I honestly don't know the answer to it. I assumed that some of those current buildings had come before you, even before my time, but I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the
And I can
main
check
building,
with Chuck to
been
see
there
if he remembers.
80 years, for sure. Yeah, over 100 probably. I know it sometime or another, but
Yeah, this is the first one.
It was the original one. It was the
I
original
think
house.
somewhere along the line, the 4th floor was added.
Yeah, but that was 50, 70 years ago, bro.
Yeah, well, probably 1910 or 1920, somewhere in there.
Why is that one section not torn out?
Yeah.
All the steam pipes went in there.
Okay.
Barry, I can also check the tie because a lot of those, projects get worked out with, he still has to sign off too. So he'll know if there's a history there
Yeah.
and what it's been
And
through.
it's not a concern that did anything wrong.
Mhm.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, you just wanna make
Yeah,
sure-
That's what we should have,
Yeah, I mean, they're great about their permits. and
right.
Doing things by the book, but.
And that's the reason we were actually looking at the institutional zoning,
Mhm.
because, I mean, it costs a lot of money for every variance they need.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
everything they do would require a variance according to our ordinances.
But I
Unless,
believe the
unless
fees
it's
on-
rebuilding what's existing, you know,
the fees on the permits on some of those buildings are
Oh.
quite significant.
Right.
But they do help, I mean, we do a lot more permits than the average town. I think we're probably doing more than Plymouth. And the fees cover the cost of building commission and, you know, when Jim ends up in court on 415 Lakeshore, that's, you know, what sustains, what was sustaining Chuck's salary at the time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look into it and
I mean,
send you guys an email
I know when-
update.
you know, we've had maybe say first few setbacks from, you know, whether it be court or it be, you know, for us.
And it was tough.
I just don't want to get in the process where we're missing something that we shouldn't be
Yeah, sure.
due to whoever wants to complain about it, but you know, wherever it comes to. I'd like to have a good result.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. You're accountable to the zoning ordinance and the community and, definitely should. It's just like the one we found on Hammer Road.
Right.
Yeah. I will, talk to Ty and if I need to call Chuck, I'll give him a call too.
Weren't we talking at some point about excluding the academy or having some,
What it was is the academy, of course, is the academy, but the academy also owns quite a bit of property in town limits as well as whatever. But this zoning, the institutional zoning, it's not, it'll be separating. It's not just gonna be for everything that the academy owns. It's actually gonna be institutional zoning. So within that campus,
Their foot, the campus.
the
footprint.
campus
Campus
And
property.
probably
footprint.
at the high school too. And
Yeah, and it would be for the high school as well, or even the school administration building.
If someone wanted to
Things
start a
like that.
college campus or.
Got plans?
But I mean, it would separate the need for us to address the variance every time that somebody done anything, then the whole structure is made beyond our ordinance.
I wonder if, I could see Notre Dame and maybe South Bend has. Cause they have obviously large buildings on their campus. Yeah, they may have a zone for it. We can take a look at that. I'll do some.
But you know what? I think you are right. It is Notre Dame,
I
Indiana.
mean, you do.
Maybe
Every
they're-
place you go, huh? Yeah, Ball State, but I mean.
Can I
Muncie
just
probably
contact-
is a good example.
I'm gonna start with Notre Dame.
Yeah, but Muncie probably a good example because
My
I mean,
alma
it is
mater.
right in town.
It's its own town.
It's in
Its
town.
own town.
We
This is-
did, I have reached out to Notre Dame in the past on their emergency services and how they handle their, volunteer versus. And then also when they have big sporting events, because our ambulance is often at, like the cross-country event at the academy, it brings in thousands of people. And they like to have 2 ambulances available, football games, and we were kind of looking at, well, how do other communities handle that? Because there's an expense every time that ambulance leaves the bay. And because we usually only have one shift on at a time, if they get a call, they have to leave the football game or they have to leave the tournament or whatever. So we were, and they were great about providing us information. And then City of South Bend, they have agreements between the city, but Notre Dame has its own fire department on campus. So I can look into the zoning and I'm sure there's something.
get its own fire department too.
Right.
Or maybe bigger than that.
Yeah, well, they face that if both high schools that hurry up, the academy and the community school, that's football game, they have to have 2 ambulances.
Yeah.
They have to have-
Yeah. And there was a time that, I think, we've had 1 or 2 directors of the EMS that in the past, I mean, even back when it was volunteer service when Sally was on it, you know, there was a time when a couple of them had thought about charging for that, but it's a community service for the schools, and the schools are always, so there's such a good synergy between the schools and the towns projects and that sort of thing that it just didn't make sense to do that. And it really has, I mean, I've been at those, I used to photograph a lot of football games at the academy when Grant was doing photography. And there were a number of times that a kid gets rushed to the hospital, and you're glad it's right there. They don't have to wait the 3 to 5 minutes or whatever. So it's worth it having it.
Who's up for reappointment this year for BZA?
Andrew and Barry's. Now Dan's will have to be reappointed from the plan commission, not from council or
Yeah.
council president, and then those two are.
Yeah.
I believe Barry's is council president appointment, and I think yours might be council. But they will do all of that, and so come in and fill out the form that says you want to stay. Yeah, she probably emailed all of you on the
I
super.
didn't get one.
He can just be sworn in, I think, can he?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm standing right here and he's standing right.
She wouldn't have given you one, Dan, because yours is gonna be appointed by the.
Because I was
planning
by this,
commission.
I just need to get reappointed by the plan.
Yeah.
commission.
Yeah. And
Start
you're-
on. It's not by the plan
Hey,
commission,
you
by the
want
plan.
you want a forehand or
By
backhand?
the plan commission president.
Right, by the plan. Well, thanks, Bear. I appreciate
He'll stay on if he gets paid good.
that. That's right.
Just guarantee him some white white
It's
chocolate
mandatory,
macadamia
and if I
nuts.
say he's gotta be on it, it's mandatory.
I think so.
Yeah,
I don't think your name is God.
We've been paying him so well all this time.
that was
And
basically a
cookies.
joke, but I do
Right.
need him. I need him bad.
Okay, anything else?
Well,
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second,
Hit that gavel.
who moved?
Hit the gavel.
Second.
Hit the gavel.
Manaway, Osborne.
Yeah. Boom.
We are. Okay, thank
We
you.
are a,
Come have a good